Hello everyone, today we will talk about malaria. It's another type of infectious disease. So in this lesson you will learn what's the pathogen of the malaria, how this pathogen is transmitted to human body, how people infected with this pathogen especially, and what are the symptoms and which organs are affected. And at home you will learn some other topics about malaria by doing activity book chapter 10.5 by using your books. And by using the internet, find latest statistics of prevalence of this disease and fatality rates in Kyrgyzstan. So let us find with the pathogen. Pathogen of the malaria is not a prokaryotic bacteria, but they are eukaryotic unicellular organisms. They are classified as protozoa. Not all protozoa are parasitic, but this form in the picture is shown with the blue color. It's a plasmodium, which is the parasite of malaria. And this plasmodium is penetrating into a red blood cell. It's our red blood cell. So they need red blood cell for their reproduction. And this bigger picture shows our red blood cells and some parasites, plasmodiums, which are already inside our red blood cells and reproducing sexually. So these are the pathogens are transmitted to our body with the special mosquito that is called Anopheles mosquito. There are nearly 60 species of Anopheles mosquito, and they carry not all of them, but some of them. If they're infected with the pathogen, with the plasmodium, they can be the vectors of the malaria. So there's a word vector. Vector means any organism which is carrying the parasite from one person to another person. So vectors, especially these mosquitoes, Anopheles mosquitoes, especially female Anopheles mosquitoes, carry the pathogens from one person to another person. Especially pathogens, they need mosquitoes because this host, this host pathogens reproduce sexually. But there's also another host, which is a human body. They need also this host because in the human body they reproduce asexually. So Plasmodium have two hosts. One host is primary host is mosquito, and the secondary host is human body. Of course, mosquitoes don't become ill, but when this Plasmodium parasites enter the human body, they cause malaria disease. And of course, for mosquito to finish its life cycle, they need both of these hosts. So let us see the life cycle of the mosquito. So here we see how the mosquito injects the parasites into human body. Of course, if this mosquito is already infected, it also becomes a carrier or a vector, and when it uh, finds the human body to suck blood from it because it's a female mosquito and they need blood to feed their eggs. But of course, if in their saliva contains these parasites, they enter into the human body and they travel to the liver, our liver, one of the most important organs. And in the liver, they use for reproduction. And these parasites change form and become a merozoites. And these merozoites leave the liver with blood and they enter in our red blood cells where they undergo asexual reproduction. Of course, some of the parasites stay in the body, but some of them change and become special cells that we call like gametocytes. Gametocytes are the stage of the plasmodium where they will undergo sexual reproduction. But for sexual reproduction, they don't need human body. They must enter back to the mosquito. So when the any mosquito, infected or not infected mosquito, when mosquito bites the infected person with blood, they also take these gametocytes. And these gametocytes enter the mosquito body, go to the abdominal part somewhere here, and they reproduce sexually, which means these gametocytes, one of them is male, another is a female, and they join to each other to form zygote, and the zygote develops and produce plasmodia that we call sporocytes, and these plasmodia go to the mouth part of the mosquito, and in the saliva of the mosquito they stay in there. And when this mosquito bites another person, and in this way these parasites transmitted from one person to another person. And mosquito need both of these hosts. If one host is absent, the life cycle cannot be completed, and the parasites die together with the host. But there are millions of people living in uh, those endemic countries. I will talk about endemic countries later. Which countries have there are lots of numbers of prevalence of the malaria. So there are millions of people, and there are maybe millions and millions of mosquitoes. And in this way, every year, millions of people are infected with the malaria. So don't forget there are two hosts. One of them is mosquito, which is a primary host, main host, and there's a secondary host, which is a human. And the secondary host, which is a human, when it is infected with the parasites, there's an illness called malaria. So once the parasites enter the human body and especially live in the red blood cells, what are the symptoms? So as you learned from this slide, we understand that, uh, of course, this shows the stages of the life cycle of a plasmodium. So as you see in A, infection, person is infected when the infected mosquito bites, if this mosquito bites contain its saliva parasites, and B, parasites travel to the liver and they reproduce asexually in our red blood cells in the liver and they multiply. And these parasites enter in our red blood cells where they undergo their reproduction and produce gametocytes. And in D, gametocytes are transmitted to another mosquito where they need for their sexual reproduction. And in this way, the life cycle continues. So once they infect the people, what are the symptoms? So let us learn with the next slide. So symptoms are generally related with the red blood cell, especially as you learn that they use our red blood cells and they destroy our red blood cells as you see in this picture. The main symptom of this is anemia, but of course anemia don't start directly. The first symptoms start with the chills, shivering of the body, and it continues with the fever up to 38, 39 degrees or maybe 40 degrees, and night sweats. Sweating is the very important symptom of the malaria, headache, and sometimes also nausea and vomiting are also common symptoms of malaria. But when they destroy our red blood cells, they can also cause anemia. And of course, there is a treatment for this disease, and there are lots of medications, drugs can be used to treat the illness. So that's why in developed countries, we don't have much prevalence of the malaria disease, but again in underdeveloped countries where there is poor medicine maybe. Okay, so what are the statistics? We said that it's an endemic disease, And like cholera, the same countries we can see South African countries, some of the African countries, and we can see some Asian countries. So the bold red color is the areas where the malaria transmission occurs, and light red colors where areas with has a limited risk, not much, but there can. So why these countries again? Because the first one is maybe poor medicine or no budget for the medicinal strategies, and especially another strategies to prevent the illness, which fight with the mosquito, fight with the plasmodium. Uh, so this statistic shows that malaria is an endemic disease. So, uh, according to the World Health Organization, it's in 2017, the registered cases is nearly 220 millions of people had this disease, and in 1 year, in 2017, 435,000 people died. It's a really very big number. And according to the WHO, it's 30% decreased from the 2010. So there's a good news that strategies to prevent the disease are working. Within 7 years, the death toll, the number of dead people, death of the disease decreased up to 30%. But again, still remains as an endemic problem in these countries. So what we learned from this lesson is that malaria is an endemic infectious disease caused by a parasitic protozoa called Plasmodium. It's a eukaryotic unicellular organism, not a bacteria, not a virus. The pathogen penetrates the human body when infected female Anopheles mosquito bites and injects its saliva. The parasite affects the liver and red blood cell. The symptoms start within 2 weeks. Common symptoms are chills, fever, sweating, headache. Some people have resistance of the disease. So although they have the plasmodium parasites in their blood, they don't show symptoms at all. So this type of disease is called as a asymptomatic disease. So what is your homework? All answers in the activity book chapter 10.5 must be finished, and the latest statistics of the malaria, its prevalence and fatality rates in Kyrgyzstan. And of course, I will send also one worksheet, finish them and send to my personal email. Thank you very much. See you soon.